Imagine a universe where death is not the end, where chaos, war, and madness rule every corner of existence. A place where gods battle for souls, and mortals are nothing but dust beneath their feet. Now imagine someone stepping into this grim, bloody nightmare. Someone who laughs at death, mocks the gods, and treats the apocalypse like a playground. That someone is Deadpool, the Merc with a mouth, the man who can't die. The walk-in chaos grenade, dropped right into the universe of Warhammer 40,000. What happens when a man who breaks the fourth wall enters a world where reality itself can barely hold together? When humor meets horror, and immortality meets eternal war. In this video, we dive deep into a twisted reality where Deadpool crosses into the 41st millennium. From fighting beside space marines to roasting chaos gods, from making orcs laugh to driving the Inquisition insane, this is not your average crossover. This is Deadpool unleashed in the most brutal universe ever created. So, grab your bolters, polish your katanas, and prepare for a full-scale journey across madness, mayhem, and merciless laughter. Because this is what if Deadpool entered Warhammer 40K. When Deadpool suddenly finds himself hurled through a swirling rift of crimson light and black energy, his first thought isn't about survival. It's about whether his teleportation belt malfunctioned again, or if this was just another bad taco dream. But when he lands hard on a battlefield littered with the corpses of alien monstrosities and humans clad in massive suits of armor, he realizes this isn't his usual playground. The air reeks of oil, blood, and ozone. The sky is choked with smoke, and the ground trembles with the roar of distant artillery. Around him, towering warriors with Aquila symbols on their chests march in perfect formation, their bolt guns thundering like mechanical gods of death. Deadpool, in his usual red and black glory, takes one look at the Gothic architecture and skull-covered tanks and mutters something about Gothic cosplay gone wrong. He knows immediately that wherever he is, it's not Kansas, and it's definitely not Marvel's Earth. As he surveys the scene, his regenerative mind starts piecing things together in the worst possible way. He sees soldiers wearing flak armor chanting prayers before firing their weapons, and massive banners depicting a skeletal figure on a golden throne. Deadpool, being Deadpool, naturally assumes he's crashed into some kind of post-apocalyptic church convention. The next moment, a group of Astra Militarum soldiers spot him and immediately open fire, their lasguns slicing the air with red beams. Instead of taking cover, Deadpool waves his hands frantically, shouting, "Friendly! Friendly, I'm just lost and possibly hallucinating," only to take several hits to the chest. He falls dramatically, quipping something about how red laser tag is totally unfair, before popping right back up as his healing factor knits his wounds in seconds. The soldiers, horrified, mistake him for some kind of chaos-tainted mutant and call for backup. Within minutes, the battlefield becomes a chaotic stage for Deadpool's brand of insanity. He dodges bullets, slices through stray alien creatures with his katanas, and yells at the sky as if arguing with the narrator of the grim world itself. You call this a universe? Where's the fun? Where's the color palette? He complains while decapitating a charging orc and kicking the head like a soccer ball. His absurdity stands in stark contrast to the unrelenting seriousness of everything around him. Every soldier, every tank, every weapon, and every chant seems to drip with fanatic devotion to war and death. Deadpool, ever the Joker, starts mimicking their chants just to annoy them, reciting prayers to the Emperor of Burritos, before charging headfirst into another skirmish. When the Space Marines finally arrive, the mood shifts. Massive figures clad in power armor approach, their presence so imposing that even Deadpool pauses mid-joke. Their leader, a stoic ultramarine captain, demands his identification. Deadpool salutes dramatically and introduces himself as Sergeant Maximum Chimichanga of the 69th Meme Division. The Space Marines don't laugh. They rarely do. Instead, they raise their weapons and warn him to submit for interrogation. Deadpool, of course, responds by striking a dance pose and saying, "Only if you buy me dinner first." What follows is a bizarre showdown between the galaxy's most disciplined soldiers and the most unpredictable mercenary in existence. Bullets fly, chainswords whir, and Deadpool moves with the agility of a madman who doesn't understand the concept of fear. Every time they cut him down, his body reforms, limbs growing back as he keeps taunting his opponents. In between the chaos, Deadpool's inner voices begin arguing about where he actually is. One insists it's hell, the other thinks it's a crossover comic gone too far, and Deadpool himself wonders if he can find a Taco Bell somewhere in this place. He picks up a discarded chainsword, admires the craftsmanship, and jokes about how this baby would make Wolverine jealous. He even tries to talk to one of the fallen Space Marines, giving him an impromptu motivational speech about believing in yourself even after you're bisected. The grim soldiers nearby watch in stunned silence, unsure whether he's a demon, a Xenos experiment, or just an abomination of reality. When a chaos portal suddenly opens nearby, Deadpool's curiosity gets the better of him. He rushes toward it, assuming it's some kind of interdimensional taco delivery service. Instead, he's greeted by demons of the warp-writhing nightmarish creatures that hunger for souls. Rather than panic, he greets them like old friends, offering them a high five and saying, "Finally, someone with a sense of humor about dismemberment." The demons hesitate, confused by his lack of fear and the fact that his mind is already so fractured, they can't corrupt it further. For the first time, the forces of chaos collectively question their life choices as Deadpool starts doing finger guns at them and asking if they take orders for Chan as the battle around him escalates. Deadpool starts realizing that he might be the most normal person in this entire galaxy, which says a lot. The Imperium is filled with zealots who worship a corpse on a throne. Chaos worships madness incarnate, and the aliens are all busy trying to eat or enslave everyone. Compared to that, his own brand of insanity almost feels sane. He begins to adapt, painting an Imperial Aquila on his costume with blood and declaring himself Deadpool, defender of deliciousness and occasional justice. The soldiers don't know whether to salute him or shoot him, and the Space Marines eventually decide that execution might not be enough. They start calling for an exterminatus, assuming that if this creature spreads, the galaxy's sanity could collapse completely. Deadpool doesn't care. He's too busy trying to ride a lemon rust tank like a rodeo bull while yelling movie quotes. His laughter echoes through the battlefield, a sound so alien to this grim universe that even the Emperor himself might raise an eyebrow. For once, amidst endless war and despair, there's something new in the galaxy, a force that doesn't seek conquest, worship, or chaos, but pure, unfiltered chaos for the sake of amusement. The 41st Millennium has never seen anything like Deadpool, and from the moment he arrived, reality itself started laughing with him, or at least trying to keep up. When Deadpool's chaotic landing draws the attention of the Imperium, it isn't long before word spreads across Vox channels about a strange red-clad mutant who refuses to die and won't stop talking. At first, the Astra Militarum assumes he's a minor warp anomaly or perhaps a corrupted psyker escaped from a heretical experiment. But as the reports continue to pile up, soldiers, claiming their entire platoons, emptied their last guns into him only for him to stand back up cracking jokes, the Imperium's interest turns from confusion to alarm. Soon, an inquisitorial detachment is dispatched to investigate, led by a grim-faced inquisitor who believes anything that cannot be catalogued or controlled must be purged. Deadpool, meanwhile, is having the time of his life, looting snacks from supply crates, photobombing Auspex drones, and trying to graffiti smiley faces on Aquila banners. When he finally encounters the Imperium's representatives, he doesn't feel fear or awe. Instead, he greets them like old friends, waving his katanas around as he introduces himself as Deadpool. Professional bad idea and part-time universe ruiner. The Space Marines accompanying the Inquisitor take no amusement in his antics. They are stoic giants, towering over him in ceramite armor, every movement radiating controlled violence. Deadpool circles them, admiring their armor like a fanboy inspecting the cosplay group at a convention. "You guys are like Iron Man had a baby with a cathedral," he says, tapping on a Marine's greave. The Marine responds by backhanding him into a pile of rubble, his gauntlet cracking several of Deadpool's ribs. A few seconds later, the mercenary stands back up, bones snapping back into place, and gives a sarcastic salute. "Nice hit, RoboCop, but I've had worse dates." The Marines exchange uneasy glances. Even their decades of training in the face of Xeno's horrors haven't prepared them for something like him. His refusal to die or even take things seriously makes him an anomaly unlike anything the Imperium has encountered. The Inquisitor steps forward, his voice a cold whisper of authority, reciting litanies as he aims a plasma pistol at Deadpool's chest. He declares that by order of the Holy Inquisition, this being is to be detained and examined for signs of chaos corruption. Deadpool bows dramatically, pretending to surrender. But before they can shackle him, he teleports behind the Inquisitor, mimicking his speech in a mocking tone. "By order of the Holy Chimichanga Council, I hereby declare you guilty of being way too serious." The Marines instantly turn and fire, their bolters roaring. The air fills with explosions as bolts detonate around him, tearing his body apart in a shower of gore. For most beings, it would be over, but Deadpool's scattered remains start crawling back together. A hand clutches a leg, a torso reforms, and within moments, he's whole again, covered in soot and grinning beneath his mask. The Inquisitor, for the first time in years, feels something resembling confusion. Deadpool, on the other hand, is in his element. He starts narrating the whole confrontation out loud, as if speaking to an invisible audience. "Okay, so we've got the space cops, the medieval priest with the space gun, and me, the lovable anti-hero who just won't shut up. You can probably guess who wins this episode." His self-awareness unsettles the Imperium forces even more. To them, the galaxy is governed by divine law and unyielding logic. A being that mocks reality itself, who speaks of audiences and universes beyond their own, feels like a warp-born nightmare. When one of the Marines demands that he stop his blasphemous speech, Deadpool simply shrugs and quips, "Buddy, I've been called blasphemous in at least 6 religions. And that's just before breakfast." The Imperium tries several methods to subdue him. Chains of blessed steel, psychic binding, and even null fields are deployed. But Deadpool's body seems to adapt in bizarre ways. At one point, a psyker attempts to read his mind, only to scream and collapse from the mental noise, a chaotic flood of voices, pop culture references, and random thoughts about tacos. The Inquisitor, now convinced Deadpool might be a demon wearing human flesh, orders an execution. Deadpool kneels mockingly, making jokes about final words, and as the bolter round detonates in his head, he collapses, only to wake up seconds later, groaning. "Man, do you guys ever take a break? Even Thanos gave me a vacation once." His humor and regeneration defy everything the Imperium understands. In their galaxy, there is no room for chaos that doesn't have a god behind it. But Deadpool's chaos comes from pure absurdity, not the warp, and that makes him even more dangerous. Over time, rumors of the Laughing Heretic spread across Imperial ranks. Some soldiers claim he's a chaos trickster sent to mock humanity's faith. Others whisper that he's a saint of madness, a divine punishment sent by the Emperor to test their sanity. Deadpool leans into the rumors, creating fake sermons about himself, standing atop destroyed tanks while preaching about the holy order of infinite sarcasm. Whenever the Imperium tries to capture him, He vanishes sometimes through teleportation, sometimes by simply walking away when no one's looking. Even the most battle-hardened soldiers begin to fear his unpredictability more than the orcs or tyranids. When Deadpool finally stumbles into an imperial city, he's overwhelmed by the architecture towers of Gothic steel, golden statues, and countless skulls staring from every corner. He mocks it relentlessly, pointing at random structures and giving them Yelp reviews. 10 out of 10 for atmosphere, -1 million for the lack of Mexican food. His commentary draws the ire of local priests, who attempt to exorcise him with incense and prayer. He plays along, pretending to be possessed, rolling his eyes back and speaking in a demonic growl before breaking into laughter. "Sorry, Father, the demon just wanted some tacos." The priests panic, calling for the Adeptus Sororitas, and soon Deadpool finds himself pursued by flaming sisters chanting litanies of purification. The entire encounter becomes a farce of grimdark proportions. The Imperium, the most humorless force in the galaxy, faces the embodiment of absurdity, and nothing they do makes sense against him. He turns their rituals into punchlines, their threats into games, and their battles into slapstick scenes of carnage and confusion. He doesn't just fight the Imperium, he rewrites how they perceive reality. In a galaxy where there is only war, Deadpool's presence becomes something entirely new, a walking paradox, a joke the universe itself isn't ready to understand. When Deadpool finally begins to grasp the nature of the Warhammer 40K universe, his reaction isn't awe or terror, it's sheer disbelief. Everywhere he goes, he's met with people who take everything with deadly seriousness. Every prayer, every battle cry, every mechanical function is delivered with the same grim reverence, as if the fate of existence hangs on it. To Deadpool, it's like stepping into the world's longest funeral that never ends. He walks through cities where citizens march in silence, whispering hymns to a god who hasn't spoken in 10,000 years, and he can't help but laugh. You guys ever, I don't know, smile? Crack a joke? Watch a rom-com between wars? He mutters to no one in particular. The people stare at him as though he's a demon wearing human skin, and in a way, that's not far from how they perceive him. To them, joy and levity are alien concepts, distractions from duty and survival. To Deadpool, it's the most depressing playground he's ever been dropped into. He tries to make sense of it, even attempting to blend in with the locals for a time. He buys a tattered brown cloak, covers his face, and joins a crowd reciting the litany of protection. Within seconds, he starts giggling, unable to keep a straight face. Seriously, guys, you pray to your toaster before using it? That's some next-level OCD. The surrounding worshippers recoil, some dropping to their knees in horror at his blasphemy, others calling for the ecclesiarchy to intervene. Deadpool, oblivious or perhaps just ignoring the danger, claps along to their chants and adds his own lyrics about chimichangas and spicy tacos. When a preacher confronts him and accuses him of heresy, Deadpool points to the massive golden statues looming over the square and says, "Buddy, if your god's this insecure that he needs this many skulls to feel important, maybe he's the problem." The preacher faints on the spot, and Deadpool saunters away, humming a mariachi tune, unaware that his mockery could get entire districts purged out as he explores deeper into Imperial society. He's struck by how everyone seems trapped in an endless cycle of duty and despair. Soldiers fight and die for a cause they don't fully understand. Civilians live in fear of heresy, and the only art that exists is propaganda. Deadpool, who thrives on chaos and humor, can't resist trying to improve things. He starts painting colorful graffiti across city walls, writing slogans like "Smile or die trying," and "Make the Imperium fun again." The Arbites quickly declare him a threat to public order, and squads are dispatched to capture the mysterious vandal. But every time they arrive, Deadpool's already moved on, leaving behind doodles of the Emperor wearing sunglasses or holding a chimichanga. These small acts of rebellion ripple through the hive cities, confusing the population. Some begin whispering that a new saint has emerged, one who preaches joy instead of suffering. Others believe it's a test of faith sent by chaos. Deadpool, of course, has no idea he's accidentally started a theological debate across an entire planet. He wanders through manufactorums, watching workers toil endlessly under the watchful gaze of servitors and priests of the machine god. When he learns that people literally worship their machines, he can't contain his laughter. "You guys pray to your Wi-Fi routers? No wonder nothing works right here," he says, only to be nearly incinerated by a tech priest's plasma torch. Instead of fleeing, he mocks them further, pretending to chant in binary and spinning around like a malfunctioning cog. The adepts are horrified, not just because of his blasphemy, but because his antics somehow make the nearby machines operate more efficiently. The Omnissiah's faithful fall to their knees, confused and terrified, whispering that perhaps this lunatic has divine coding power. Deadpool takes a bow and declares himself the holy mechanic of mayhem, before teleporting away to avoid becoming a religious icon. The deeper he dives into this universe, the more absurd it seems to him. Every faction is obsessed with death, purity, or power, and no one has time for a laugh. Even the orcs, with their chaotic energy and love of destruction, take themselves seriously in their own brutal way. Deadpool tries joining a band of orcs for a while, figuring they'd appreciate his chaotic humor. At first, he makes them laugh with wild stories and ridiculous dance moves. But when they realize he's not interested in fighting all the time, they decide he's too weird even for them and try to eat him. As usual, Deadpool takes it in stride, cutting his way free while joking, "Man, tough crowd. Guess I'll stick to performing for humans." The Eldar find him even more intolerable. When he stumbles into one of their craft worlds through a malfunctioning portal, they view him as a psychic contamination. He calls them space elves with superiority complexes, which earns him a psychic blast to the chest. He shrugs it off, compliments their fashion sense, and asks if they have Netflix. The Eldar quickly banish him, fearing that his mere presence could disrupt their precious balance. Deadpool's laughter echoes through the webway as he's thrown out, leaving a trail of sarcastic applause. As time passes, Deadpool's influence begins to infect the world around him. A few brave souls start repeating his jokes in secret. Small gatherings form in dark corners of the hive cities, where people tell stories about the red-clad madman who mocks fear and laughs at death. Some even start wearing crude masks painted like his, believing that laughter keeps the warp's madness at bay. The Inquisition, of course, declares these gatherings heretical and purges them mercilessly, which only fuels Deadpool's contempt for the entire system. He watches from afar, muttering, "You can't shoot humor, guys. It always grows back." Even the grim warriors of the Adeptus Astartes can't fully comprehend him. They see him appear on battlefields, joking in the middle of firefights, dodging explosions, and talking to invisible people. They call him the Laughing Curse, a being that defies the very laws of the universe. Some even theorize he's a new kind of warp entity, one born not of despair or lust or rage, but of absurdity. Deadpool just finds it hilarious. He jokes that he's the galaxy's comic relief, the one character who remembers that all of this, every gun, every god, every war, is just part of someone else's grimdark story. To the Imperium, that's blasphemy beyond comprehension. To Deadpool, it's just another punchline waiting to land. When Deadpool's antics finally reach the attention of the Inquisition, things take a dark and explosive turn. The Imperium can tolerate Xenos, demons, and even the occasional rogue psyker. At least they know how to classify those threats. But a being that cannot die, mocks the Emperor, and spreads laughter like a contagion? That's something the Inquisition cannot allow to exist. Within days, entire task forces are mobilized, And the order is clear. Find this heretic and execute him by any means necessary. Deadpool, of course, doesn't take any of it seriously. When the Inquisition's gunships descend upon the Hive City where he's hiding, he stands in the middle of the street holding a sign that reads, "Free Hugs and Heresy." The first volley of fire vaporizes the sign. The second disintegrates half his torso, and by the third, he's already cracking. Jokes about how he's had worse mornings after tequila. The Inquisition sends squads of Tempestus Scions to corner him in an abandoned cathedral. They enter cautiously, weapons raised, reciting prayers as they move. The structure is silent except for Deadpool's humming echoing through the corridors. "Ave Emperor," he says in a mock-solemn tone from the shadows. "Deliver us from boredom." The soldiers open fire, and for a moment, it seems like the mission is over until one of them hears a voice behind him whisper, "Peekaboo." Deadpool appears, hanging upside down from a chandelier, dual pistols blazing. The room erupts into chaos. Bodies fall, explosions rip through the walls, and through it all, Deadpool keeps talking, narrating the fight like he's filming a movie trailer. In a world where everyone's too serious, one man dares to make puns while being shot in the face. He leaps through the air, flipping over pews and slicing through armored soldiers. His laughter bouncing off the cathedral's stained glass windows. When the dust settles, the inquisitorial forces are in ruins, but Deadpool isn't unscathed. His armor is shredded, half his mask is gone, and his flesh is still knitting itself back together. He picks up a fallen Inquisitor's rosette and examines it, pretending to give a speech. "I hereby declare myself the new Inquisitor of Comedy. My first decree: no more skulls on everything. Seriously, you people have an addiction." Before he can finish his joke, a bolt shell tears through his head, vaporizing it completely. Moments later, his body twitches, his neck pops, and his head regenerates like a balloon inflating. Ow. Okay, note to self, never monologue near space priests. He looks up to see an entire squad of Adeptus Astartes emerging through the smoke. The Space Marines approach with mechanical precision, their armor bearing the sigils of the Death Watch. They have faced alien horrors beyond imagination, but even they hesitate when Deadpool waves cheerfully and says, "So who do I talk to about joining your book club?" The Marines open fire without hesitation, their bolters roaring as they reduce him to pieces again and again. Every time he falls, his body pulls itself back together, and every time he returns, he has a new joke ready. You guys ever heard of personal space? You really live up to that whole grimdark vibe. The Marines switch to purgation protocols, unleashing flamers that engulf him in white-hot fire. Deadpool stumbles out, charred but smiling, muttering about how it reminds him of summer vacations in hell. Realizing he can't be killed by conventional means, the Inquisition escalates the situation. They capture him using a null field device designed to suppress psychic anomalies, and for a brief moment, his body weakens. He's shackled in adamantine chains, dragged before an inquisitorial tribunal, and surrounded by priests, psychers, and executioners. The Inquisitor presiding over the trial reads out a list of charges that takes nearly an hour to finish. Deadpool listens patiently, pretending to take notes, then raises his hand. "I plead guilty to being awesome. Also, to stealing some snacks from your armory. But come on, your rations taste like cardboard." The hall goes silent, the Inquisitor trembling with fury. With a solemn voice, he declares Deadpool's sentence death by vaporization, sanctified by holy fire. Deadpool yawns, looks at the audience and says, "Again? You guys really need new material." They execute him in front of thousands. His body is torn apart by plasma, reduced to ashes, and the ashes are scattered into space. For the first time, the Inquisition believes the threat is gone. But hours later, deep within the void, the ashes begin to shimmer. Molecules knit together, tissue reforms, and Deadpool reappears, floating in the darkness. "Wow," he mutters, looking around. "I think I've hit rock bottom, literally cosmic dust level. Been there, done that." He teleports back to the planet, just in time to interrupt an inquisitorial sermon about his defeat. Bursting through the church doors, he shouts, "Miss me?" And the congregation erupts in panic. At this point, the Inquisition's frustration reaches legendary levels. They deploy assassins from the Officio Assassinorum, elite killers who have ended wars with a single shot. Deadpool encounters an Eversor assassin first, a hyperactive killing machine pumped full of combat drugs. The two clash across rooftops, blades flashing, explosions lighting up the night. Deadpool can't help but find the assassin hilarious. "Hey, you're like me, but on worse drugs." He laughs as they tumble off a tower. The Eversor detonates his failsafe charge, blowing both of them to pieces. Minutes later, Deadpool's hand crawls out of the rubble, flips a thumbs up, and the rest of him regenerates around it. 10 out of 10 fight. "Would die again," he says, walking away whistling. Eventually, even the Inquisitors begin to lose faith in their mission. Their executions fail, their weapons prove useless, and their psychers suffer breakdowns trying to comprehend his mind. Deadpool becomes an unkillable myth, a joke the Imperium can't erase. To them, he's not just a heretic but a living blasphemy against the concept of despair itself. Each attempt to destroy him only makes his legend grow. Wherever he goes, people whisper about the fool who mocked death, who laughed at the Emperor's wrath, and who survived every punishment thrown his way. Deadpool doesn't care about the fear he spreads. To him, it's just another adventure in a universe that desperately needs someone to remind it how to laugh. Even if that laughter comes between explosions, executions, and the endless fire of the Inquisition's fury. When Deadpool's chaotic presence begins to warp the very atmosphere around him, it doesn't go unnoticed by the powers within the warp, the Chaos Gods. Ever hungry for new sources of corruption, turn their gaze toward this strange, unkillable mortal who laughs in the face of despair. Khorne, the blood god, is intrigued by his endless violence. Nurgle finds amusement in his ability to regenerate endlessly. Slaanesh admires his unpredictability and indulgent nature. And Tzeentch, the great schemer, sees a mind so fractured it bends logic itself. They all try to claim him in their own way, sending whispers into his dreams and visions into his mind. But Deadpool's consciousness is too fragmented to be manipulated. One moment, he hears Tzeentch offering him the secrets of reality. And the next, he interrupts the vision with a joke about needing better Wi-Fi in the warp. His madness acts as a shield, an accidental form of resistance that frustrates even the most ancient gods. However, something strange begins to happen. Deadpool's laughter and absurdity start to ripple through the warp like an infection, a frequency that the demons can't categorize. Wherever he goes, the usual psychic gloom surrounding the galaxy starts to distort. Demons appear not to attack but to watch, confused by his presence. One time, a host of bloodletters charges toward him, screaming praises to Khorne, and Deadpool simply drops his weapons, starts doing a ridiculous dance, and shouts, "Who wants a group hug?" The demons stop mid-charge, unable to comprehend what they're witnessing. Some vanish back into the warp out of sheer disbelief. Deadpool walks away laughing, unaware that his chaotic energy is twisting the warp around him in ways that defy its own nature. Eventually, the Chaos Gods decide that if they can't control him, they might as well see if he can serve them. Slaanesh sends illusions of pleasure and indulgence, offering him eternal satisfaction and entertainment. Deadpool responds by making sarcastic comments about already being the star of every bad fanfiction. Nurgle tries to welcome him as a son of resilience and decay, promising him an eternity of festering life. Deadpool simply sneezes, wipes his nose on a demon's face, and jokes about needing better hygiene products. Khorne, ever furious, challenges him to endless combat, but Deadpool's unpredictability frustrates the war god to no end. Instead of a glorious duel, Deadpool throws pies, fires rubber chickens from a makeshift launcher, and tells knock-knock jokes mid-fight. Korn roars in rage and banishes him from his domain, shouting that this fool has dishonored the sanctity of battle. The only one who seems remotely entertained is Tzeentch, who watches him closely. Fascinated by how Deadpool's madness creates spontaneous outcomes that even he cannot predict, then something unexpected happens. Deadpool begins to gather followers. Not through intention or manipulation, but simply because people exposed to his presence start losing their sense of despair. In a galaxy consumed by eternal war and suffering, laughter becomes something dangerous, something heretical. A small cult begins to form around him, calling themselves the Brotherhood of the Laughing Mask. They spread across hive cities and battlefields, painting Deadpool's insignia and preaching the gospel of absurdity. Their creed is simple: nothing is sacred, not even death. They wear crude masks painted red and black, chanting slogans that confuse both the Imperium and Chaos alike. The Inquisition brands them heretics, and Chaos cults call them mockeries. But in the warp, something begins to shift. A new kind of psychic resonance starts to emerge, fueled by humor, irony, and chaotic joy. The demons of chaos feel it but can't categorize it under any god's domain. It's not rage, not pleasure, not decay, not change, just pure nonsense that somehow bends the rules of the warp itself. The chaos gods grow uneasy. They sense that Deadpool, without even trying, is becoming a focal point of this strange new energy. His presence begins to take form within the Immaterium, not as a demon, but as an avatar of absurdity, a being whose power stems from the contradiction of laughter amidst suffering. Some demons even start calling him the Laughing Fool, a parody of divinity that undermines everything the Chaos Gods stand for. When Deadpool learns about this, he doesn't understand or care. He just thinks it's hilarious that people in this galaxy started a religion about him. He paints himself a makeshift crown, finds a throne made of scrap metal, and declares himself the god of chimichangas. When a group of cultists bows before him, he waves dismissively, saying, "No sacrifices, please. Just bring tacos and good vibes." Yet even his mockery adds to the phenomenon. The warp, ever shaped by emotion and belief, begins to echo his energy. In some sectors, demons start appearing in bizarre forms, clownish, erratic, unpredictable, no longer bound to their master's intent. Korn's warriors randomly break into laughter mid-battle. Nurgle's hosts start telling jokes about rot and pus. Slaanesh's demons become confused about whether they're supposed to fight or applaud. Reality itself begins to bend, and for once, the Chaos Gods feel uncertainty. Tzeentch tries to use this new development to his advantage, approaching Deadpool through psychic projections disguised as friendly voices. He promises him ultimate power, a chance to rewrite the galaxy in his own image. Deadpool listens for a while, pretending to take notes, then interrupts with, "Can I make everyone wear clown shoes?" Tzeentch hesitates, then answers, "In theory, yes." Deadpool grins, says, "Deal," and then forgets about the entire conversation 5 minutes later. The great schemer realizes he's dealing with something far beyond manipulation. Deadpool's chaos isn't strategic or emotional. It's random, uncontrollable, and self-perpetuating. Soon, whispers spread throughout both the material and immaterial realms that a new chaos power might be rising, one that doesn't seek domination but disruption. The servants of the dark gods argue about it in disbelief. Could there truly be a fifth god, born of laughter and madness, who doesn't crave worship but simply exists to mock existence itself? The idea terrifies and fascinates them. But Deadpool remains blissfully unaware, too busy trying to convince a group of corrupted cultists to play laser tag instead of summoning demons. His accidental ascension as a chaos champion of laughter becomes a cosmic joke, the ultimate irony in a universe that has forgotten what humor feels like. Deadpool's unpredictable nature makes it impossible for him to stay loyal to any side for long. One day, he's fighting alongside the Imperium, claiming he's finally found his calling as a holy crusader for the Emperor. The next day, he's cracking jokes with orcs, painting his armor green and shouting, "Wog!" louder than the greenskins themselves. His sense of morality, already fractured beyond repair, completely disintegrates in the endless wars of the 41st Millennium. To Deadpool, there are no good guys or bad guys, just endless opportunities for chaos, adventure, and bad puns. Wherever he goes, alliances crumble, enemies unite against him, and yet somehow, no one can ever truly hate him for long. He's too absurd, too unpredictable, too strangely charismatic in his insanity. Even when entire armies want him dead, they can't help but hesitate. Unsure whether to fight him or laugh. His first real alliance begins with the orcs, after stumbling into one of their battlefields. Deadpool watches their wild charge with childlike excitement. "Now this," he says, "this is my kind of therapy group." He joins in the fray, wielding his katanas alongside their brutal choppas, laughing and shouting nonsense. The orcs, confused but amused, accept him almost immediately. To them, Deadpool's love of destruction and noise makes him a proper orky lad. They give him the nickname, "Da Red Git Wat Don't Die," and he revels in it. For weeks, he fights with them, riding into battle on ramshackle vehicles, yelling ridiculous slogans, and making up war songs that even the orcs find strange. But eventually, his constant jokes and refusal to take orders annoy even the most patient war boss. When Deadpool paints smiley faces on the war boss's favorite squiggoth and names it Fluffy, the orcs decide it's time to kill him. They surround him, weapons raised, and Deadpool sighs dramatically. "Every time I make new friends, they try to kill me. Is it my personality?" He fights his way out, laughing the entire time, slicing through green-skinned warriors like a tornado of blades and sarcasm. After barely escaping the orcs, he ends up in the path of a chaos warband. The followers of Slaanesh are instantly fascinated by his regenerative abilities and bizarre sense of humor. Their leader, a flamboyant chaos lord adorned in spikes and silks, offers him a place among their ranks. Deadpool, ever the opportunist, accepts on the condition that they let him spruce up the armor designs. Within hours, he's painting their armor pink and gold with glitter he somehow conjures out of nowhere. The Chaos Marines tolerate it at first, amused by his unpredictable energy. But when he starts hosting dance battles in the middle of raids, they lose patience. Even Slaanesh's most devoted warriors find his antics excessive. During one particularly chaotic battle, Deadpool hijacks their communication channel and starts narrating the fight like a sports commentator. And here comes Mr. Tentacle Arm swinging for the goal. Oh, that's a miss. Better luck next time, champ. By the end, half the warband is either dead or too confused to continue fighting. The survivors curse his name as he waves cheerfully and teleports away, leaving behind graffiti of himself giving a thumbs up with the words, "Thanks for the party." Next, Deadpool decides to try his luck with the Eldar. He reasons that if anyone might appreciate his sarcasm and flair, it would be space elves with fancy armor and psychic powers. When he first appears on a craft world, the Eldar immediately assume he's some kind of warp corruption and prepare to annihilate him. But Deadpool, always disarming in his absurdity, distracts them by applauding their fashion sense and asking if they do custom work. Against all logic, one of their leaders decides to study him instead of killing him outright. They can't sense any true warp corruption in him, which makes him even more fascinating. For a time, he travels with them, learning their ways, mostly so he can make jokes about them later. He calls the Farseer Space Gandalf, names a Wraithlord Big-Boned Barry, and constantly interrupts their meditations by asking if they have snacks. Eventually, even the patient Eldar run out of tolerance. They teleport him off the craft world mid-sentence, sending him tumbling through the void until he crashes onto another war-torn planet. This time, Deadpool lands in the middle of a Tyranid invasion. Surrounded by monstrous alien creatures, he just shrugs and says, "Well, this is new." Instead of fighting them, he starts talking to them, pretending they can understand him. "You guys are like the Xenomorph's weird cousins, right? Do you also have acid for blood? No? Okay, my bad." When the Tyranids swarm him, he slashes and shoots wildly, laughing as their claws tear through him. Every time they rip him apart, his body reforms, confusing their hive mind. They begin to hesitate, unable to categorize him as prey or threat. For hours, Deadpool fights them, joking the whole time, until the swarm withdraws in apparent confusion. Somewhere in the hive mind, a new rule is written: avoid the red man who laughs at death. After that encounter, Deadpool drifts through space, hitching rides on derelict ships and wrecked freighters, never staying in one place for long. He joins a rogue trader's crew briefly, charming them with his humor and unpredictability, only to accidentally get them hunted by the Inquisition again. Later, he fights alongside a squad of space marines from the Salamanders chapter, pretending to be a mutant experiment gone right. His healing factor and fighting skills earn their respect for a time, but his constant chatter about merchandising opportunities gets him thrown off their ship. Every alliance he forms ends in the same way, with confusion, chaos, and Deadpool walking away unscathed, humming a tune as everything burns behind him. What makes him so impossible to categorize is that he doesn't truly serve anyone, not chaos, not the Imperium, not even himself. He switches sides on a whim, motivated by boredom or amusement more than ideology. To him, the galaxy is one giant playground filled with dramatic, over-serious people who desperately need to lighten up. He'll help the Imperium one day by saving a squad of guardsmen from certain death. Then the next, he'll sell their coordinates to a band of pirates, just because he finds it funny. No one can predict what he'll do, and that unpredictability becomes his greatest weapon. In a universe where every faction is bound by destiny, duty, or damnation, Deadpool is something else entirely, a free agent of absurdity, whose only loyalty is to chaos for chaos's own sake. Inside the warp, reality bends, time fractures, and even gods go mad, but Deadpool treats it like a theme park. When he first enters that swirling realm of nightmares, he doesn't scream or lose his sanity like most mortals. Instead, he looks around at the endless storms of color, the floating islands of screaming souls, and the rivers of liquid chaos, and simply says, "Wow, this place needs a gift shop." His mind, already unhinged, fits perfectly within the warp's shifting madness. Where others lose themselves, he feels at home. His thoughts scatter into the screaming void, yet somehow reform stronger, stranger, and more chaotic than before. The demons who first sense his arrival expect an easy kill, a mortal mind to devour. Instead, they find themselves face to face with something that shouldn't exist, a being who laughs in the face of oblivion and refuses to obey the rules of existence. The first demon to approach him, a great writhing horror of teeth and flame, bellows threats of eternal suffering. Deadpool just stares for a moment before replying, "You're like a lava lamp that got angry." 10 out of 10 on the aesthetic, though. The demon pauses, confused. When it lunges, Deadpool teleports onto its back and rides it like a rodeo bull, shouting, "Yeehaw!" Across the warp, the creature thrashes and roars, unable to shake him off. Other demons gather, watching in disbelief as the mortal slices off tentacles and makes sarcastic remarks about their hygiene. When the demon finally dissolves back into screaming light, Deadpool bows theatrically to his invisible audience. Thank you. I'll be here all eternity." From that moment, the warp begins to ripple differently. Something new and dangerous spreads through it, not fear, not hope, but confusion. Even the most ancient entities whisper about the mortal who laughs in the dark. As Deadpool wanders deeper, he starts to encounter the servants of the Chaos Gods themselves. The minions of Khorne charge at him, roaring for blood, only for him to challenge them to a friendly arm wrestling competition. He lets them cut him in half, only to regrow and continue talking mid-fight. "You guys really take leg day seriously," he quips, dodging blows and slicing back with playful precision. The demons of Nurgle try to infect him with their rot, but his healing factor shrugs it off instantly. Instead of horror, Deadpool feels fascination. "You smell like expired soup," he tells one plague-bearer, before hugging it just to see what happens. To their shock, nothing about him makes sense. Not his body, not his mind, not even his soul. When Slaanesh's demons attempt to tempt him with their pleasures, he responds by handing them a kazoo and challenging them to a dance-off. When Tzeentch's horrors try to ensnare him with illusion and trickery, he laughs and starts narrating their schemes aloud, breaking every plan before it even begins. Soon, his reputation spreads through the warp like a virus of absurdity. Even the Chaos Gods themselves begin to take notice. Khorne rages that someone could spill blood without reverence for war. Nurgle watches in strange amusement at the mortal immune to decay. Slaanesh delights in his unpredictability, yet grows frustrated by his refusal to take anything seriously. But it is Tzeentch, the Lord of Change, who studies him most closely. In Deadpool, he sees something beyond comprehension, a being who breaks the script of destiny itself. Every soul in the universe plays a role, bound by fate, corruption, or devotion. Yet Deadpool stands apart, untethered by logic or consequence. He cannot be predicted, manipulated, or even truly destroyed. When Tzeentch sends visions to probe his mind, he finds not order or madness, but endless self-awareness. Deadpool looks directly into the vision and waves. "Hey bird brain, stop spying on me. I don't do spoilers." It's not long before Deadpool starts speaking directly to the warp itself. He cracks jokes at the screaming skies, makes fun of demons that don't exist yet, and narrates his own adventures out loud. Every time he breaks the fourth wall, the warp shivers. Demons whisper that he can see beyond the barriers that even gods cannot pierce. In one bizarre moment, he turns to the viewer, whoever or whatever is observing his existence, and says, "Oh, you're still watching? You're part of this too, you know." That awareness destabilizes everything around him. Fragments of reality fold in on themselves, and entire demon legions vanish into nothingness, unable to handle the paradox of being acknowledged by something within the story. Even the realm of chaos, where logic has no meaning, struggles to contain him. At one point, Deadpool stumbles upon a warp storm so massive it devours entire star systems. Most would flee in terror, but he walks right in, claiming he's looking for a good taco stand. Inside, he meets manifestations of thoughts, dreams, and nightmares from countless species. He talks to them all, turning their horror into banter. A screaming face made of lightning asks him who he serves, and Deadpool answers, "I serve the plot, buddy." And sometimes the fans. His ability to recognize the absurdity of existence drives the warp's denizens insane. To them, he's not mortal or immortal, he's something that shouldn't exist. A self-aware wound in reality that mocks the very foundation of belief. Even the Chaos Gods grow uneasy. They attempt to influence him, to draw him into their service. Khorne tries to bind him through endless battle, but Deadpool treats it like a game, counting his kills out loud like a child keeping score. Nurgle offers him the peace of decay. But Deadpool says, "No offense, big guy, but I already smell bad enough." Slaanesh tempts him with fantasies of eternal pleasure, and he responds by performing stand-up comedy for her demons, mocking them until they slink away in embarrassment. When Tzeentch finally confronts him directly, appearing as a vast storm of color and eyes, Deadpool simply holds up a mirror. "You're not the only one who likes breaking rules," he says. Before the reflection shows Tzeentch's true face, a glimpse so absurd that even the god recoils in disbelief. Over time, Deadpool's presence begins to warp the warp itself. The colors shift unpredictably, laughter echoes through the void, and strange cartoonish physics begin to appear. Demons slip on imaginary banana peels, lightning bolts explode into confetti, and for the first time in eternity, the Chaos Realm feels humor. But it's not the comforting kind, it's the laughter of madness, uncontrollable and contagious. Some demons start mimicking Deadpool's behavior, cracking jokes and questioning their masters. The warp becomes infected with self-awareness, and even the fabric of reality starts to bend in unfamiliar ways. In a place where emotion fuels existence, Deadpool's chaos becomes a new kind of power, one that defies even the gods. Through it all, he never stops talking to the warp, to himself, to anyone who might be watching. "You see, my dear audience," he says once while juggling glowing skulls of pure energy, "the secret to surviving in the warp is simple. Don't play by the rules. Be the glitch." The demons watching can't understand what he means, but somehow, they feel the truth of it. Deadpool is not bound by this universe or any other. He exists between stories, between realities, forever aware of the absurdity of it all. And in the endless storms of the warp, where gods wage eternal war, there is now laughter unpredictable, unstoppable, and disturbingly human. When Deadpool finally crosses paths with a Primarch, it happens entirely by accident, as most things in his life do. One moment, he's wandering through a battlefield littered with burning tanks and shattered bodies, cracking jokes about the decor, and the next, he's standing face to face with a towering figure of divine power and authority. The air around the Primarch hums with raw energy, his armor glowing with the light of the Emperor's will. To most mortals, it would be like standing before a god. To Deadpool, it's just another tall guy in fancy armor. He tilts his head, squinting up at the giant, and says, "Wow, you must be compensating for something." The Primarch doesn't react at first. He simply studies this strange mortal with red and black armor, twin katanas, and a complete lack of fear. For the Primarch, who has seen demons, heretics, and demigods, this encounter feels different. There's something fundamentally wrong about Deadpool, something that doesn't fit within the laws of the universe. Their first clash isn't really a battle, it's a misunderstanding. Deadpool, bored and eager for attention, mistakes the Primarch for a cosplay champion, and challenges him to a duel for the fans. The Primarch, insulted but intrigued, accepts. His blade moves faster than thought, striking with the strength to cleave tanks in half. The blow should have vaporized any mortal. Instead, Deadpool's body splits in two, both halves groaning dramatically before regenerating within seconds. "Ouch," he says, brushing ash from his mask. That tickled. For the first time in centuries, the Primarch hesitates. This mortal does not bleed, does not scream, and does not die. He attacks again, faster this time, each strike a blur of divine fury. Deadpool counters with a mix of martial arts, slapstick, and pure nonsense, throwing grenades labeled plot twist and shouting one-liners mid-combat. The ground around them cracks, reality bending under the force of their clash. Every time Deadpool falls, he rises again, mocking his opponent with quips about respawn timers and DLC boss fights. The Primarch's patience begins to erode. His every instinct screams that this creature should not exist, that something about him defies all reason. The Emperor's light flares within him, seeking to purge this anomaly, but Deadpool only grins wider. "You know," he says while dodging a blade swing that could split mountains, "you remind me of someone. Big broody daddy issues." "Oh yeah, Batman." The comparison means nothing to the Primarch, but the tone infuriates him. He channels the full power of his psychic might, creating a storm of energy that scorches the ground and tears at the sky. For miles, the battlefield becomes a maelstrom of fire and psychic lightning. Imperial soldiers and chaos cultists alike flee in terror, thinking the world itself is ending. In the center of it all stands Deadpool, his costume burned, his body half disintegrated, yet still laughing. "I've had worse hangovers," he mutters. Raising his swords again, their battle rages across ruined cities, through warp-torn skies, even into orbit for a brief moment when Deadpool hijacks a shuttle mid-fight. He slams buttons randomly, yelling, "To infinity and beyond," before the shuttle explodes, sending them both plummeting back to the planet below. They crash through a cathedral dedicated to the Emperor, their impact toppling statues and shattering stained glass. Deadpool lands in the debris and groans, "That's gonna leave a mark on the building, not me." The Primarch rises from the rubble, his armor cracked, his fury barely contained. He has fought demons of the warp and Xenos monstrosities, but nothing like this. Every strike that should end the battle only makes Deadpool more annoying. Every attempt to reason with him fails because Deadpool refuses to acknowledge the seriousness of the fight. As the duel continues, the Primarch begins to notice something strange. His blows seem to lose weight, his sense of time distorts, and even the battlefield's atmosphere starts to shift around Deadpool. It's as if reality itself bends to his will. The Primarch, who understands the warp and the Emperor's divine order, realizes that Deadpool operates on a level beyond mortal comprehension. He is not bound by the laws of causality or fate. When Deadpool winks mid-fight and says, "Hey, don't worry, big guy, the fans love you," the Primarch feels something he hasn't felt in millennia. He can sense eyes upon them, unseen observers beyond the veil of reality, and somehow this ridiculous mortal knows they're there. The realization shakes him to his core. Deadpool fights like someone aware of the script, aware of destiny itself, and mocking it. For a brief moment, their battle pauses. The Primarch demands to know who or what Deadpool truly serves. "I serve the narrative," Deadpool replies, spinning his sword idly. "And maybe tacos. Mostly tacos." The Primarch calls him a heretic, an aberration that mocks existence. But Deadpool simply shrugs and says, "Hey, everyone needs a hobby. Yours is yelling. Mine's surviving impossible situations." They resume fighting, but now the Primarch's strikes seem to falter. His faith is pure, his power immense, yet nothing he does can stop the man before him. Deadpool taunts him constantly, dancing around his attacks, quoting random Earth pop culture, and breaking every possible rule of combat decorum. When the Primarch tries to strike him with psychic energy, Deadpool raises a fourth wall shield, pretending to hold an invisible barrier, and somehow it works. The psychic blast dissipates into harmless static, leaving both combatants staring in disbelief. The longer the fight drags on, the more absurd it becomes. Deadpool manages to ride the Primarch's Thunderhawk like a surfboard through the flames of a battlefield. He steals the Primarch's helmet mid-swing and wears it mockingly while making deep, dramatic speeches. He even pauses mid-duel to pull out a comic book version of their fight and says, "Spoiler alert, you lose the rematch." The Primarch's fury peaks, his aura blazing brighter than a dying star. He unleashes a final attack, a beam of pure divine wrath that obliterates everything in its path. When the light fades, Deadpool's body is reduced to ash. The Primarch finally exhales, victorious, though uneasy. But then, from the smoke, a voice mutters, "Wow, you're good." But the CGI budget's running low. Deadpool steps out completely healed, brushing off imaginary dust. Round 2? Something in the Primarch breaks, then not his body, but his understanding of reality. For a being who has spent his life enforcing order in a universe of madness, Deadpool represents the ultimate contradiction, chaos that cannot be controlled, destroyed, or explained. Their duel no longer feels like a fight between warriors, it feels like a test of existence itself. The Primarch, despite his pride, begins to laugh not in mockery, but in disbelief. For the first time in centuries, he finds humor in the absurdity of it all. Deadpool nods approvingly. "See, you're getting it. You just gotta loosen up and let the plot do the driving." Then, with a wink, he teleports away, leaving the Primarch standing alone amid the ruins, questioning whether the battle even happened or if it was just another dream in the Emperor's vast, strange universe. The galaxy had seen monsters, gods, and legends, but it had never seen anything quite like Deadpool. His arrival spread through the stars like wildfire, his name whispered across the void by soldiers, psychers, and even demons. Every faction tried to explain him, to define what he was, but none could agree. To the Imperium, he was a heretical abomination that somehow refused to die. A mutant unblessed by the Emperor, yet uncorrupted by chaos. To the Orcs, he was a walking party. A red-armored warrior who fought like one of them and never stopped laughing. To the Chaos cults, he was either a prophet of a new god or the embodiment of madness itself. The Eldar called him a tear in fate's tapestry, an unpredictable anomaly that disrupted even the threads of prophecy. Wherever he went, stories followed tales of a red and black warrior who insulted Primarchs, danced in battlefields, and cracked jokes in the face of death. At first, the galaxy dismissed him as a rumor. Soldiers told tales of him around campfires to ease the fear of war. They said he would appear on doomed worlds, cutting down demons and heretics alike while delivering sarcastic one-liners. Some claimed he fought alongside the Space Marines one day, then helped the Orcs blow up an Imperial fortress the next. Others swore they saw him inside the Eye of Terror, laughing with the demons of Slaanesh. None of the stories made sense, yet all of them spread. Then came the recordings, grainy Vox transmissions, and hololithic feeds showing a masked figure dancing amid carnage, blowing kisses at the camera before vanishing into thin air. The soldiers who saw him in person couldn't explain how he moved, how he survived, or why reality seemed to bend around him. All they knew was that wherever he appeared, the impossible happened. As Deadpool's legend grew, so did his influence. Chaos cults began painting his symbol, a cartoonish red mask on their banners, believing him to be the herald of a laughing god of death. The Imperium panicked, thinking it was a new chaos cult rising across the sectors. Inquisitors hunted for him, declaring him a heretic whose mockery of divine order was a greater blasphemy than sorcery itself. But they could never find him. Every time they came close, he appeared in their ships, sitting in the captain's chair, munching on imaginary popcorn, and commenting on their dramatic speeches. "You guys really need to work on your PR," he'd say before teleporting away, leaving behind a doodle of himself saluting the Emperor. The Inquisition branded him an anomaly of extreme danger. Cody named the Laughing Plague, but even they couldn't determine if he was man, demon, or something else entirely. Among the Orcs, Deadpool became something of a folk hero. They told stories of the Red Git Wat Don't Die, who charged into battle shouting nonsense and killing anything that moved. Orcs who claimed to have fought beside him described how he would slapstick his way through enemies, sometimes accidentally blowing up their own vehicles and laughing about it. They loved him for his chaos, for his refusal to take anything seriously. Some warbosses even tried to summon him by painting red masks on their faces and shouting his name into the void, hoping he'd appear and join the next WAGH. Sometimes he did. And when he did, the battlefield would turn into a carnival of madness, explosions shaped like smiley faces, guns firing confetti instead of bullets, and Deadpool riding a looted tank while yelling movie quotes. Even the Orcs, who thrived on chaos, found him unpredictable. But perhaps the strangest reaction came from chaos itself. The demons of the warp couldn't categorize him. He wasn't corrupted by their power, yet he thrived in their realm. Some began to worship him as an avatar of unfiltered chaos. Beyond even the control of the four gods, Slaanesh admired his indulgent madness. Khorne respected his love of battle, Nurgle laughed at his resilience, and Tzeentch despised him for his unpredictability. A few even believed he was the true fifth god of chaos, a deity of irony, randomness, and laughter. When cultists began building shrines to him, Deadpool found out and decided to spice things up. He visited one of their temples, autographed their altars, and left graffiti that said, "Stop trying to make me a god. I already have commitment issues." The cultists took it as a divine revelation and spread the message further, convinced that humility was part of his divine plan. The Eldar, on the other hand, were horrified. Their seers peered into the skeins of fate and found a shadow wearing red and black, skipping across destinies that were never meant to exist. Wherever he appeared, the threads of prophecy tangled into nonsense. Entire futures collapsed because Deadpool existed where no possibility allowed him to. The Farseers argued that he was not a being of the warp or the material world, but something in between, something that mocked causality itself. They called him the Broken Thread, a name whispered with fear. Even the Harlequins, servants of the laughing god Sigurach, watched him with a mix of amusement and terror. Some thought he was a fragment of their god's will made flesh. Others believed he was a foreign intruder who had found a way to manipulate the performance of existence itself. When a group of Harlequins tried to recruit him, he joined them for one performance, improvised every line, and ruined the entire act by making fun of the audience. They never invited him back. For the common people of the Imperium, Deadpool became something more than myth. He became a symbol. To some, he was hope, a reminder that even in the grim darkness of the far future, laughter could still exist. To others, he was a curse, a mockery of divine order. Children on Hive worlds whispered his name like a ghost story, imagining the red jester who appeared to punish bullies and make fools of tyrants. His graffiti began to appear across worlds, a red mask with two swords crossed behind it, often accompanied by the words, "Relax. It's just a game." No one knew what it meant, but somehow it spread, even reaching planets untouched by his presence. Eventually, even the Adeptus Mechanicus became obsessed with him. They recorded his battles, studying his regenerative powers and his ability to warp reality. Their calculations failed to produce answers. Every scan, every attempt to dissect his nature led to paradoxes. When one Magos finally confronted him, demanding to know his secrets, Deadpool leaned in close and whispered, "I'm not supposed to be here." The Magos went insane within seconds, his mind unable to process the concept of a being aware of its own fiction. Across the galaxy, the reactions continued to divide. Some worshipped him, others hunted him, and many just tried to ignore him, as if ignoring the absurd would make it vanish. But Deadpool thrived on attention, and the more the galaxy talked about him, the more real he became. The memes, the whispers, the propaganda, they all fueled his existence. Every soldier who laughed at his jokes gave him strength. Every cultist who cursed his name added to his legend. In a universe driven by faith and fear, Deadpool discovered something new. Fame was its own kind of power. And through that, he became unstoppable, a living contradiction in a galaxy that had forgotten how to laugh. The silence of the battlefield was shattered by the roar of engines that seemed to tear through the fabric of the void itself. From the smoke and the ash emerged the Punisher. Clad in armor that was unlike anything the Imperium had ever forged, jet black ceramite, covered in scars of countless wars. And emblazoned across his chest, the white skull that had become a symbol of fear across worlds. His ship, a modified gunship marked with the same grim insignia, descended like a blade of vengeance, unleashing fire upon heretic strongholds with surgical precision. No faction could claim him, no god could command him, and no law could bind him. The Punisher was his own force, an avenger that stalked the stars, with purpose sharper than any bolter round. His arrival in the 41st Millennium began not with a war, but with a massacre. A chaos warband known as the Skull Serpents had overrun an imperial world, enslaving its population and desecrating its shrines. When the Adeptus Astartes arrived weeks later, they found the stronghold silent. Every heretic had been executed neatly, efficiently. Each corpse marked with a bullet wound to the head and the symbol of a white skull burned into their armor. The only message left behind was a piece of parchment nailed to the warlord's throne. It read, "Justice is not negotiable." The Astartes searched for the one responsible but found no trace. Then, the pattern began to repeat across other systems. Heretic leaders were hunted down one by one, their strongholds turned into graveyards, their followers vanishing into smoke. Whispers began to circulate in the underhives and war zones of a lone warrior who brought death like divine punishment. When the Inquisition finally caught sight of him, they thought he was a rogue Astartes, a lost son of Guilliman gone mad. But when they analyzed his weaponry, they realized it didn't match any known Forge world. His guns were brutal, efficient, and ancient, forged with craftsmanship that even the tech priests could not replicate. His armor seemed to adapt, reshaping itself after every battle, patching its own damage as though alive. When interrogators finally cornered him on a derelict ship, he simply looked at them and said, "I don't serve your emperor. I serve justice." The Inquisitors tried to detain him, but he vanished before they could even open fire, leaving behind nothing but shell casings and the stench of burnt heretic blood. Rumors spread fast. Some said he was a weapon created by the emperor himself during the dark age of technology, a machine built to enforce moral order. Others whispered he was a lost Merc who had forsaken both Imperium and Chaos to pursue his own war. Whatever the truth, the Punisher's crusade only grew more violent. He targeted Chaos warlords, slavers, corrupt governors, and even Imperial officers who abused their power. His sense of justice was absolute, untouched by politics or faith. He became both savior and nightmare, protector and executioner. To some, he was a saint of vengeance. To others, the herald of Judgment Day. When the orcs first heard of him, they mocked the idea of a lone Hume daring to face entire warbands. But that mockery turned to awe when the Punisher infiltrated a mech fortress, destroyed their fuel stockpiles, and slaughtered an entire horde of orcs in a single night. Survivors spoke of a black ghost who moved faster than bullets, who killed without a sound until the entire fortress was silent. The orcs, in their brutal simplicity, began to call him Dak Hillboss, a title they usually reserved for their most feared warriors. Even they, the creatures of chaos and laughter, felt a chill when they saw his symbol painted in blood. Among the Eldar, his existence was a paradox. Their Farseers saw him in visions as a figure wrapped in darkness, his actions cutting through fate like a knife. He was not tied to any prophecy, nor did he serve any god. To them, he was an anomaly, a mortal whose rage had become so pure that it defied the threads of destiny. The Harlequin spoke of him as the shadow that judges, a being who stood outside the dance of gods and mortals, punishing both without discrimination. When a group of Eldar warriors attempted to warn him of the consequences of his actions, he responded coldly, "Consequences don't matter when the guilty still breathe." They left him to his war, recognizing that no reason or logic could sway a man who had become the embodiment of retribution. Chaos feared him in ways they could not understand. He did not tempt, he did not rage, and he did not despair, he simply destroyed. His hatred was pure, uncorrupted, and without desire. To the demons of the warp, he was a void, an emptiness where corruption could not take root. Some whispered that he had once stared into the eye of terror and walked away untouched. The champions of Khorne challenged him for glory, only to find themselves decapitated before they could swing their axes. Sorcerers of Tzeentch tried to ensnare his mind, but their spells broke against his will like glass against steel. Even Nurgle's plagues failed to infect him, burning away as though his very soul rejected decay. There were whispers that even the gods watched him with unease, for he represented something they could not control, a mortal who had freed himself from the eternal cycle of corruption and obedience. For the people of the Imperium, he became a forbidden legend. Some guardsmen painted white skulls on their armor, believing it would bring them his favor. Others prayed to him in secret, asking not for mercy, but for vengeance. The ecclesiarchy condemned his worship, calling it heresy, but his symbol kept appearing on walls and ruins, spreading like wildfire. To the downtrodden and oppressed, he was hope, the proof that justice could still exist in a universe built on lies and death. To the powerful and corrupt, he was fear, the promise that no sin would go unanswered. Entire planetary governors disappeared overnight, replaced by messages carved into their thrones, punishment delivered. When the Space Marines finally confronted him, they found not a heretic, but a reflection. A warrior stripped of faith yet burning with purpose. Some chapters, like the Black Templars, saw him as an insult to their holy crusades, while others, like the Raven Guard, saw in him the purest expression of vengeance. None could capture him. He moved like a ghost between wars, appearing where corruption festered, disappearing once justice was done. His legend spread across the stars, whispered in trenches, printed in Forbidden's books, etched on the sides of tanks. Across the millennia, his story refused to die. The Punisher became more than a man, he became a force of nature. His skull symbol turned into a warning, a reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, even in a universe of gods and monsters, there still existed something that neither chaos nor order could corrupt: the will to punish evil, no matter the cost.